Okay, guys, who wants to see some performance modifications on a small block 400? That's right, the other guy's small block. We're looking at tuning. We've got a cam change from hydraulic roller to solid roller. We have two different intakes, and we have a Wilson tapered combo spacer. So check it out. Hey guys, I'm surprised that you're even here, but welcome to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the other guy's small block Chevy, and I know you're thinking, Richard, wait, how can you have an other guy's small block Chevy? Well, even within the small block Chevy family, there are some that are very, very common, like a small block 350, and some that are really not common. In this instance, it's a small block 400. That's right, the biggest small block that they made from the factory. And I know that they're rare, and I know that they're definitely qualify as other guys because I've never seen one at the wrecking yard. Truth be told, I may not have looked under the hood of every motor in every wrecking yard, but I do keep an eye out for them, and I've yet to find one in a wrecking yard. So Richard, why would you want a 400? Why don't you just pick a 350 and make a 383? Well, because in this case, bigger is better. It's always much easier to make more power with more displacement. And a 400 obviously has more than a 350. So if you're going to make more power, you may as well start out with much more displacement. I've got some cool testing on the small block 400. We ran a couple of different camshafts. We changed from a hydraulic roller cam to a solid roller cam. That's right, we stepped way up in camshaft with, predictable results. We tried some jetting. We tried different intake manifolds, both of them single planes, and we also tried a CARB spacer. Lots of cool stuff on the other guy's small block 400, so let's take a look. Okay, guys, let's jump right in and talk about the small block 400. And if you're lucky enough to find one, I've never seen one in the wrecking yard, but quite honestly, I don't think I've been looking at a lot of the truck applications. I don't see a lot of older full-size vehicles like station wagons and stuff that they may have come in. Might see them in trucks, but I don't think I've ever run across one at the wrecking yard. So the 400 small blocks are kind of hard to find. That's why they're considered the other guy's small block, even though a small block Chevy is hardly other guys. But the small block 400 definitely is. This particular one was actually a aftermarket block. So it came from the guys at Speedmaster. In fact, the whole short block came from those guys. It had their own block, which was a 4125 bore and 3750 stroke. We had the forged internals, we had the forged crank, forged rods, forged pistons. This thing with the Dart 225 CNC-ported heads that we put on here was about 11 1/4 to 1 static compression. We could take a look at the rest of the things. We put a good sized camshaft in it, not real big. We're going to show you what a cam upgrade does, but we put a Comp XR294R, which is a hydraulic roller cam. This is actually a hydraulic roller cam. This one had a 540-562 lift split, a 242-248 degree duration split, a 110 degree lobe separation angle. Other things, we obviously Comp supplied the hydraulic roller lifters. We had 1.6 gold rockers on this thing. So we had actually a little bit more valve lift than we would with the 1.5s. Running the 1.6 rockers in place of the normal 1.5 ratio that you'd use on a small block Chevy brought our lifts up to 576, 599. This one had a 110 degree lobe separation angle. So this was, starting out a pretty good combination. We wanted to have enough carburation and induction system, obviously, to feed our ported heads and good sized camshaft. We had our dyno headers on this thing, but we started off with a Dart single plane intake manifold and one HOLLEY 950 carburetor. Pretty good size for this combination. And then we started off with 34 to 35 degrees of timing, played with timing until we got that right. But I want to show you, this is the whole tuning process that we go through when we have one of these motors on the dyno. So when this thing was new, we did a break-in procedure, obviously. And then we go through, we usually try to get the jetting right, and then we'll have low timing, and then we'll run the timing, up and down to see what kind of timing this thing wants. But I'll show you what happened. This is one combination where it actually did respond fairly well to jetting. So what we did was we just took the 950 out of the box or out of the cabinet at Westech, put it on, and we just kind of see where we are. And if it's too rich, then we take jetting away. If it's too lean, then we obviously add jetting. But here's what happened. So we ran this motor at wide open throttle, and we saw peak power of 563 horsepower, 562. And peak torque checked in at 508 foot-pounds of torque. But here's what happened after we took some jetting away from this thing. And I'll show you the change in the air fuel here. So you can see we were able to pick up a pretty good bit of power, and this is just from the jetting. This is not from timing. So 574 horsepower. Peak torque checked in at 512 foot-pounds of torque. I'm going to go ahead and show you the change in air fuel right now. You can see the different air fuel curves. We've changed the jetting. We took 4 jets out of the primary and out of the secondary. Ultimately, we did it in steps, but ultimately this is where we got. So we moved from a little under 12 to 1, let's say, as a whole. Obviously, it's moving around up to 12.75 to 1. And this combination, this is where it made best power, and this is kind of where we stopped with this particular combination. But one of the other things that we did was we put a solid roller camshaft in this thing. Because we had enough displacement and static compression and head flow and induction system, we thought, you know what, let's step up a little bit in camshaft. It was already making pretty good power, but we wanted to, you know, take it to the next level, as it were. Here's what happened when we put a solid roller camshaft in it. We'll go ahead and take a look at the specs on the solid camshaft. This camshaft was came from the guys at Bullet Cams. It was a 671 666 lift, and we had enough spring and coil bind clearance and everything in those 225 dart heads, so this wasn't a problem. And both springs work with the solid roller and the hydraulic roller. We just had more spring than we needed with the hydraulic roller stuff, but since we were near 600 lift, it all worked out very well. We stepped up in duration quite a bit, 264, 270. On the solid roller camshaft, and again 110-degree lobe separation angle, but instead of the 1.6s, we put the 1.5s on, and so this was actually the lift. We didn't go with more lift, and we didn't try that for people that are going to ask in the comments. But here's what happened when we put the solid roller in. We were up over 600 horsepower. So this combination, this Bullet Cam, worked very well. 610 horsepower. Peak torque was up to 524 foot-pounds, and compared to the hydraulic roller, the solid roller did better from about 45 or 4600 on up. But now let's take a look at a couple of other tests that we ran while we had this motor on the dyno. Okay, guys, we're taking a look at our small block 400. The other guy's small block, 400, because you just don't see very many of them. This was an aftermarket block, but we took a look at what happens when we first put the motor together, and then we did a little bit of tuning on it, changed the jetting on the carburetor, and then installed a pretty good size, pretty healthy solid roller cam in place of the hydraulic roller cam. And so we're ended up, we're over 600 horsepower, 610 horsepower. And 524 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the hydraulic roller stuff and get rid of our jetting test. Now let's take a look at another test that we did while we had the solid roller cam in it. We have the Dart single plane intake manifold on. Let's take a look and see what happened when we tried one of the Speedmaster intake manifolds, also a single plane high rise, similar style to the Dart manifold. But it didn't make the power that the Dart did. It did make more power down low. It made more power actually below 5,000 RPM. We see that there. It's a little bit better. But if you take a look, especially above 6,000, 6,100, and kind of on the Dart manifold, definitely was the go-to manifold. It definitely would be a better choice. 590 horsepower versus 610, so a pretty good bid out there. Whereas the difference down here at 42 or 4,300, 480 foot-pounds versus 489. So I think I would trade that amount of power from 5,000 to 7,000, which is where you'd be running this thing, if you're running it at the drag strip. Anyway, for the loss of 10 foot-pounds down low. So you guys let me know in the comments, which one of these would you rather have? Would you rather have the low-speed power? And low speed, I mean below 5,000. This is all below the torque peak. Or would you rather have, more power on the big end? So I did one more test. So we'll get rid of our Speedmaster intake manifold there. But again, a lot of times intake manifolds, especially single plane, dual plane, these are both single plane. So it's interesting that one did better down low and one did so much better on the top. We normally see that kind of thing on single plane, dual plane deals. But let's take a look now. We ran one more test on this combination. So what we did was, with the Dart intake manifold still on there, we did some spacer tests. And we ran a few different spacers, and this is actually the one that turned out the best. You can see we got pretty good gains from the spacer. This was a Wilson tapered. Let's see, I want to make sure that I think that this was a tapered combo spacer here. Yes, it was a 1-inch tapered combo spacer. So that means it's a 4-hole transitioning basically into an open, and we got a good signal from the carburetor. You know, we're already at 4,000 RPM. We're running from 4,000 to 7,000. So we're not as concerned with a problematic signal down at idle or down when you're first nailing the throttle, at least not on this test. But the tapered combo spacer added quite a bit of power, and you could see the nice thing is it actually added power kind of all the way through the curve here, which is good. So with the tapered combo spacer on our single plane Dart intake manifold, 620 horsepower. Yeah, 620 horsepower. Peak torque was up to 528 foot-pounds, and you could see when you have a little bit of power, like we saw the difference between the intake manifolds, one's better here and one's better there, then you have some decisions to be made. When you put a spacer on this thing and you see that it gains power everywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 RPM, there's really not much of a choice. Your only choice now would be, hey, can I fit this fairly high, high-rise single plane intake manifold and carburetor and air cleaner under the hood of the vehicle that I have, and then also, could I also fit it if I have the carb spacer stacked between the carburetor and the intake manifold, because it's going to raise it up at least an inch. So can I still fit that would be the only concern. From a power standpoint, definitely yes. And please note that on this combination, this particular motor, it went on to make another couple hundred horsepower with nitrous, another couple hundred horsepower with an 871, and over 1,000 horsepower with a Vortec. Those videos might be up. If they're not up, they definitely will be up, because a lot of guys like the 400 because it definitely is other guys' stuff. Armature holder, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. More stuff like this coming up.